Hello everyone, I'm just doing a quick sound check and assuming everything is okay, we will begin. Wow, there is nothing like a successful start to a live stream. I really apologise to anyone who's just joined us. Very sorry we're slightly late. We set up an event which I wanted everyone to kind of join and sent out the links, and I just couldn't get that event to go live. So I really apologise for that. But we've created a new stream. We are here. We are live. We're only a few minutes late, so that is fantastic. The first thing I want to do is just thank everyone. I mean, thank you so much for being here. We have got 48 hours left on this campaign, and it has been absolutely crazy. I mean, just looking at the page now, we've got 6,500 backers. We're at £380,000. It has been an incredible 4 weeks, I guess. We're just over 4 weeks now, and this is so much because of you guys. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for telling people. Thank you for just, that daily click on KickTrack, the comments, the interactions. It means so much to me. I spend so much time doing this, so thank you. One of the things I'm trying during this stream is that I have embedded the live stream into the Kickstarter campaign page. So it is right at the top of the Kickstarter page. And, if anyone's asking, if you see anyone saying I can't find it anywhere, then you can send them to just the campaign page. And it's straight at the top of the page. I've not done that before. I've got absolutely no idea if that's a good idea or not. But if you're new, if you've just found us, feel free to come and ask us questions. You'll have to click on the video and go into YouTube, but we are here to answer your questions and just to talk. Hi guys, I can see that people are starting to get into the chat now. It looks like everything's coming through, so it's my pleasure, guys. Designing games is something I've wanted to do my entire life. And a few years ago, when I started designing the City of Kings, I never imagined that it would be able to become so much. And one of the things I want to talk about in this stream, whilst I'm answering questions, is just going through some of the design process for the Isle of Cats, because this game has been something I've been working on for a very long time. Pedro, I'm glad that you've managed to get it working. I'm not sure why it's not working in Firefox. That seems very strange. Fortunately, there's nothing I can do about that, but I'm glad you've managed to get it working in Chrome. So, guys, wow. I mean, we've got this one last stretch goal that we're working towards, which obviously is something that you guys have kind of inspired, these different animals around the boat, which I think is such a fantastic idea, because as much as I love the boards and how they kind of look currently, just this, having these dolphins in these corners and us being able to move them around, us being able to have like different animals and stuff, I think it's just going to really add some personality to these. And we're really, really on track. I mean, when I launched that stretch goal, I was in two minds. I was really anxious because I knew it was asking so much of everyone, and we're getting closer now. We were on, I think we've done 40,000 of like the 95,000 that we need to do, and we're not even like halfway through that period. As we all know, this last 48 hours is when things start to get really busy and things are going to just hopefully really start spiraling up. So let's just talk. I mean, the Isle of Cats, what is it? For anyone who just doesn't know at all, for anyone who's new, the Isle of Cats is a card drafting polyomino game. So this is a game where you've kind of got these Tetris-shaped little pieces and you're going to be kind of puzzling them together. But unlike a lot of the polyomino games that are out there, this game is a little bit more thinky. It's a little bit more complicated. Now, don't worry, if you're someone who's into the more simpler, lighter games, there's also a family mode too. But for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about the standard version of the game. This is something that's going to take, an hour to an hour and a half to play. It's something that's going to require you to really think. It's a game designed around lots of tiny, tiny decisions that are just going to really just melt you as you try and work out the best options for you. Every turn, you're going to have so many things you can do, and there's no right and wrong. It's just about having a good time. It's about trying to really solve the puzzle you create for yourself. And you can make it harder for yourself as you take more cards and do more complicated things. But at its basic level, it's a very, very quick and easy thing to be able to start playing. In fact, for anyone who's coming to Gen Con in a couple of weeks, it's a big show in Indianapolis in America. I will be there, Sarah will be there with me, and we will be doing demos of the game. And the rule I always set is we want you to start playing within a couple of minutes of sitting at that table. We want you to just start doing things and to understand what's going on. So we've designed this custom teaching method, which I'm probably going to do a video on further down the line to help people, but I'm really excited to be doing that as well. Guys, I agree. It'd be absolutely great for us to get those animals. And I feel confident, I'm feeling good that we're going to be able to achieve it, but we have to work hard. I always don't take this for granted. When we launched this campaign, I just started that with day one of, no one knows about us, no one knows about this, so we need to do everything we can. And I think one of the reasons the middle of this campaign has been so strong is because we've continued to push, we've continued to spread the word. And for me, this last 48 hours, it's the final step now where it's up to me to make sure that enough people know about us, that we're ready, we're here to answer questions. I showed my wife some of the vids and the game action. She was apprehensive at first, but now she's excited to play. This is one of the things. This game is very deceptive when you first look at it. People will look at it and go, oh, it's a cute cat game. Oh, it's a light polyomino game. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. But it's very different. One of the things I always aspire to do is design games which are different. Things that break the mold of what you're expecting. Things that are obviously tested. Things that I've spent a long time with hundreds of people playing through. But something that's still at the same time is just going to surprise you when you pick it up. Surprise you when you play it. And I think this is one of the things that at Origins we found a few weeks ago, I guess it was a month ago now, time goes so quickly. At Origins we found that people were just surprised by how much the game offered compared to what they initially expected from it. How long did it take you to design the game, Frank? It's always hard to answer that question because my initial answer would be 12 to 18 months. It's a game that I started working on early last year, but obviously I'm not working on it full time. I've had to do other things. We managed the print run for the City of Kings and the expansions. Obviously I've managed the print run for Vodoran Gardens, and it's one of these things where I spend a lot of time designing, and then I do some testing, and then I do designing, and I do testing, and it's back and forwards. Then I'm sending them off to people to do blind play testing. And obviously I'm not working every second of every day, but it's been a good year and a half since the game first came to be. And I think that's one of the things I want to talk about. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but for me, the inspiration behind this game comes from two different sides. One of them is I love these polyomino games. I really love this concept of taking pieces and trying to put them onto a board. I really like the idea of trying to work out the best way to do things. But with that said, I also find that often these games are just a little bit simpler than I'd like, and that's fine. They're great games, but I wanted that long game. I wanted that game where you could say, we're going to play this evening. This is going to be the main game of the night. And that's what started us off. And From day one, I knew this was going to be a game about cats. I knew that this kind of concept of polyominoes and cats is what I wanted to do, because I knew that cats and kind of this concept of them stretching and laying out in different positions, it's such a natural thing, and I was blown away that this kind of hadn't already been done. So the cats and the kind of the polyominoes were what we did, but the cat system was really challenging as well. I should say cat theme, because by default, a lot of people assume that a cat theme means that the game is going to be very light, that it's going to be a party game, that it's going to be a silly game. And that in itself is being kind of a blessing and a curse, because lots of people look at it because they go, oh, cats, that's great. But also a lot of people don't, because they just assume, they kind of have this earlier anticipation of, well, I know cat games. I know they're going to be things like Exploding Kittens, which is a totally fine game if you'd like that kind of smaller, shorter kind of party game. So there was a whole perception level of things that I had to do. I'm just going to try and keep up with some of the questions as I go through. You played the prototype of Child's Encounter last week and confirmed that it is awesome. Well, Simon, thank you so much for coming to Child's Encounters. Thank you so much for confirming that you enjoyed the game. Like, I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. From a design point of view, how do you balance negative feedback, like negative points for mice, and the need to make the player fulfilled instead of frustrated when leaving the table? So, the kind of, it's always interesting with negative points versus positive points. There is kind of several elements to it. There's the experience side of it. There's the mechanical side of it. So a really good example of this is, and I don't know how clearly you're going to be able to see this, but I will try and kind of show you, is these 4 squares at the edge of this boat. These represent a room. So there's a line here. I know you're quite far away, but hopefully you might be able to see that this end here is a room. Now, if I was to take a cat, and I know none of these are going to work, so if I was to take some treasure and put this treasure here, now I've started filling this room up. Now, let's assume that I've come along and I've put this cat here. Now I've started to fill up this room. This room at the end is now completely covered and it's full. Obviously, I've also extended into this next room. Let's assume I put a little treasure on here, which would be a terrible move, but let's assume that I've done that. And let's assume that now I'm starting to fill in more of my boat. And by the end of the game, you know that lots of this is going to be covered. Now, if I say to you, add up how many rooms that you have filled, that's really difficult because unless you know where those rooms are, you're not going to be able to do it. Now, you can do the maths of saying, well, how many rooms are there? How many rooms can I see? Let's subtract, let's multiply, let's kind of add it all together. But it's so much easier at the end of the game to go, actually, this room, this room, this room, this room, this room, this room, they aren't full. And from a kind of mechanics perspective and an experience perspective, it was a lot easier to say to people, add up the empty ones rather than the filled ones. Now, obviously, if you're filling a room, you're going to get a positive boost. If you're not filling a room, you're going to get a negative. And often people will say, well, negative points aren't great. It's not a great experience. But here's the key to this. I've never seen a full game where people end on negative scores. It's not designed where you're struggling to get to 0. It's a game where, you start on that negative 54, but your first piece, that first action, regardless of what you're doing, if you put it over here onto one of these rats, it's suddenly going to be kind of +1 because it's negating a negative. So you're starting to feel, as soon as you put stuff on, that you're starting to kind of claw your way back up. And by the end of the game, you're going to be on 30, 40, 50 points. You may be on 100 points if you're a really experienced gamer. So the negatives don't really impact in a sense of, oh, I'm on a minus. They impact in the sense of they kind of lower some of your stuff. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is one of the decisions that I think kind of makes it quite fun. Let's assume you've got a lesson card. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I've got this lesson card here just because it's the first one on the pile. This says 10 points if the middle row on your boat is full. Now that's fantastic because I can look at that and go, that's 10 points for filling this row in the middle of my boat. Now I have to make a decision. Maybe I've only got 2 pieces left and I can either fill the middle row of my boat or I can fill one of these rooms. So in my head, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I put the pieces here, I fill that middle row. That's going to give me 10 points. But I'm not going to fill this room. So that's going to give me -5. However, if I fill the room, it's going to give me 5 points. Maybe it wasn't a great example because it balanced out. But the point being is to say, I'm going to get 10, but I'm also going to lose 5, you're still gaining. And often those decisions that you make aren't about, I'm going to lose points. It's about, okay, well, in perfect world, I'm going to get 10 points. But by doing this and not achieving that, I'm only going to gain 5. So the negatives often become, it lowers the positives, but it doesn't actually create an overall negative. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. And obviously I'm happy to kind of continue going through that a little bit more. I will try and keep with the chat a little bit. So what game was the main inspiration for the Isle of Cats to be a polyomino game? Feast for Odin is what really hooked me. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I always say, it's kind of like if you take like Patchwork or Barren Park and you take a Feast for Odin, if they had a baby, then this is the game that I would want to kind of come out of that. It's trying to be slightly less intimidating than a Feast for Odin, something that's a lot more focused on polyominoes. I would say that Feast for Odin is a worker placement game that has polyominoes in it, whilst I would say that this is a game where you're going to be able to kind of focus on the polyominoes, but the complexity sits around that as opposed to before that. I'm also inspired by a game called Bunny Kingdom, which I'm a big fan of, but there's certain parts of that game which I wasn't too keen on, and there's a lot of kind of similarities of me trying to fix certain elements from that game in this game as well. Another game that also had some of the inspiration was Terraforming Mars, because Terraforming Mars has these really interesting kind of card drafting systems, and I love the complexity behind that. One of the goals that I really had with this game is you don't want too much downtime. I want it to be kind of you go, I go, you go, I go. I don't want it to be like you go, I go, because that's just kind of slow, it's dull, it's boring. So this game was really about you, me, and because there's a lot of complexity, I had to find a way to kind of streamline that. So I took it into the cards, I took it into that card draft. So a lot of the thinking, a lot of the decision making about, okay, here's the plan, here's what I'm going to do, this is my perfect situation, happens in the card draft. And that means that all players are doing this at the same time. And that means that you don't really have as much downtime as because someone's thinking for too long. And then once the card draft's done, everyone has their plan. And of course, plans can fail, things go wrong, people can kind of do things that interrupt other people. But it means that at that point, you're just kind of adapting and trying to work out how to kind of keep on board with the core strategy, but kind of moving to the side, rather than necessarily kind of creating new complex decisions as you're taking your kind of smaller turns. Can I show you some pieces? I would love to. I'm going to try and just quickly catch up on the questions. I think I'm just about done with them, and then I will go through that. Were there any fun surprises from the community that happened during the campaign that stood out to you? You have to forgive my coughing. I was very ill last week, and I'm going to try to not cough too much on the stream, but obviously I'm going to a little bit. So this Kickstarter has been one of the most surreal experiences. This is the 4th Kickstarter I've run. I've done 2 for games. I did 1 for a convention. So this is the 4th one. And there's always patterns to how they work. There's always things where, you know, you have the big kind of boost at the start. You have this kind of gradual slowdown as you kind of get into the middle, and then it comes back up at the end, which is kind of where we're at now and hopefully what's going to happen. But you always kind of expect to kind of get down to this low point. But for us, our community, was so engaged. There was so much sharing. There was so much discussion. And what I found is, as I mentioned earlier about this kind of the polyomino games being light, the cat theme being light, is right at the beginning of the project, at the beginning of the campaign. A lot of people had that misconception. They saw it as kind of a joke game, a party game. They didn't see it as that kind of big contender game. But as the kind of time went on, more and more people started looking, more and more people paid attention. And the thing that surprised me about the community was how much they kind of shifted this mentality from not understanding to being kind of full-on kind of supporters who go out there and spread the word. And as I watched that, I kept changing the campaign page. You may notice, if you've been someone who's been here from day one, you'll notice that the way the Kickstarter page is laid out has changed quite a lot. Now, it's a lot of subtle things, like nothing's been added or removed in terms of content, but the structure, the keywords that are highlighted, the titles, and that was all me targeting this kind of misconception. And it's really been amazing to watch people jump on board and just kind of, really help push that. And will I be at Gen Con? I will be at Gen Con. My booth number, I believe, is 2760. Or is it now we've gone wrong. I think it's 2760. I might be wrong. It's kind of in the back right-hand corner of the convention center. Obviously, I will put out some updates and stuff with the location as well, and not just send you to someone else's booth randomly on the stream. I love seeing creators excited about their games. I mean, when you choose to spend your life doing this as a kind of independent publisher like myself, this is something you have to enjoy. This is why some games that I kind of talk about, some games I work on, they never happen because I lose the passion for them. I realize that they're okay, but they're not something which I'm kind of truly in love with. The games I release, City of Kings, Vodoran Gardens, The Isle of Cats, these are the games which I believe are good games. They're games that I'm comfortable to sell to people because I truly believe there's something that can be enjoyed. And with that, it's just so easy to be excited and passionate about what you're doing. How many iterations did it take to scale the board and rooms to get the right balance? Okay, so what we're going to do, David, is I'm going to now talk through some of the components and show some of the stuff, and then we'll come back to the questions in a minute, guys. So please do keep them going, but I appreciate I'm going to kind of skip out because this is something that I really want to talk about in this, is the story, the creation, some of the things that exist now and some of the things that existed earlier. So many of you, hopefully all of you, can see what is on the table in front. You can also see my keyboard, so I should probably move that slightly. There we go. And this is not an advert for Microsoft, so hopefully that's a little bit better. But you can see this, and the first thing I'm going to say is this is all prototype materials. None of this is final. None of these pieces are from my final manufacturer. But it takes a lot of work to get to that step. This was not day one of the game. This is not where it all began. In fact, at the beginning, I knew this game was going to be about cats. I knew this was going to be a kind of a bigger, thinky polyomino game, but I really wasn't sure, much more than that. I wasn't sure of how things were going to come together. I had specific goals in mind, but it started very different. So let's go right back to the beginning. This was a game about rescuing cats. This was a game about, not about rescuing cats. This was a game about buying cats. And it quickly became apparent to me that's not what I wanted. But the idea behind it was very simple. You were a crazy cat person. You had to buy as many cats as you could and get them into your house. And this was interesting. So let me see if I can show you a picture. So hopefully this is going to work. This is what the original board looked like, pretty much on day one. I mean, it changed very slightly, but as far as I can remember, the very first playtest I did, this was the board and how it looked. And I'm pointing this way because that's my screen, but I see that the picture's over here. So this is how it looked. And as you can see, there were different rooms. We have the red, the green, the yellow, the three white rooms, and the little square room. So it has that same concept, but it was rectangular. This was the house. These were the rooms. And I designed this off a floor plan. So this is what you were going to try and get into your house. But here's the really interesting thing. And one of the things I realized was I wanted it to be different. And so many games, if you look at all these polyomino games, they have rectangular boards. And in our heads, we know how to make a square. You know, if you put this piece here, you know that taking one of these and putting it here is going to be an easy square. You understand that. But I started thinking, what happens if we change the shape? How do we move away from it being a square? And how do we make it more interesting? So over time, we moved towards this kind of layout, and this was one of the early prototypes again. This one was a good few months down the line, but we changed it to have these different shapes, these different edges, which became so much more challenging, because now you're not thinking about how do you build up a rectangle, you're thinking about how do I kind of block off these corners, how do I make them straighter, how do I start to bend them into the shapes I want. And with this, I kind of started thinking to myself, how do I make this work? Because a house doesn't look like this. This is not the shape of a house. And maybe it is, but it just didn't feel right. And then I started thinking about the buying cat message. And for me, it was so important that we didn't have a game about buying cats, because I don't want to be pushing that message. So in my head, I was like, well, if we switch it from buying to rescuing, that's a positive message. And this game isn't about, let's kind of go down the big, positive message route. But if you can include that, that's fantastic. So I thought, how do we rescue cats? How do we have something that's a weird shape? And then I thought, how does this fit into the City of Kings universe? Because all of my games are within that. And then I thought about Vesh. And Vesh came along, the evil warlord, the bad guy. And I was like, he's the bad guy. He's got to be the guy that's going after these cats, and we've got to save them. So how about a boat? How about a boat? Because a boat is this weird shape. We can have boats of all sorts of edges because they curve. They're not square. They're not rectangular. So with this boat and this island, it all started coming together, and I was so excited. And this was such a good few months after we began, but it was like, we can go there, we can save these cats, we can rescue them, and the mechanics of the game become more interesting. And then I thought, how do we have mice because of the house? And then I thought, a boat, it's going to have rats, it's going to work. And oh my God, you can see, I was so excited, and I kept saying to my friends all the time, I was like, I've got it, I know how this is going to work. And from there, it just kind of grew, and it organically started to kind of build on top of that. So, of course, over time, we then started kind of tweaking the shape. We started working on the rooms and the balance. And one of the things I really wanted was this idea of having a few rooms over here, which are relatively easy to do, but close. And then a couple of rooms over here that are really easy to do, but a big gap in between. Because straight away, you've got this decision point between, do I start over here and know I can do these, but will never get there? Or do I work my way around? So the boat shape really helped with that as well. And as you can see, the theme over time just started to build up, and that's where it started to grow. So hopefully that talks about some of the iteration of the board. I mean, you can see, I'm not going to get them all out, but these are the original kind of polyomino pieces that we were using. They were all hand cut, they're all drawn, the different shapes and colors. Again, adding that complexity to the game and not trying to make it just putting stuff on the board. Having the different colors straight away became really interesting and important to me. So that's where the cat families came, because I was like, well, we can tell this story. We can tell this story about these different cats that live on this island in peace, but they're all kind of distinct. They all have their own personalities. And that's something that we can kind of start growing from. So over time, again, that narrative kind of appeared, and that's where me and Ian, the guy who helps me do the writing, sat down and we kind of really started fleshing out the details of the story. And as that happened, it inspired more parts of the game, because you're on an island. There's treasure on this island. There's things you can do. And then we started thinking about kind of resources and the fish, and obviously being in an ocean, it all kind of starts coming in together. So we'll kind of go back through a little bit more of that in a minute. I'm just going to try and catch up with the questions just to see where we are at. Claw your way back up. I see what you did there. The puns are unbelievable. It's just non-stop. I'm going to try my best just to keep them going for as long as I can, because this is the perfect game. That was awful. Oh my God. Oh, I won't do them live. I will just subtly put them in. Okay, so even with 4 players that had never played before, I didn't even have an issue with downtime. The pace flow was fine. There's plenty of thinking to do as others take their turns. Simon said earlier that he was at Chance Encounters this week, I think it was, doing a test of the game. No, last week, sorry, doing a test, or playing the game, I guess. A demo is the correct word. So thank you, Simon, for the feedback. I don't know how to say your name. I am awful at names. I'm very sorry. I'm going to go with Antje, but I assume that that's completely wrong. I apologise. But I'm so happy that you found us and came across the game. Thank you so much. Cassie, the BGG show and how energetic one of the members was about the game really made me excited and decided to take the plunge. Yeah, I was so lucky to get onto that BGG show and to to get to see BGG booth at Origins and do the live stream and get to meet some of the people. It was all the people there who played the game I'd never met before. I'd be really honest, I didn't really know who they were. Kind of, I had loose ideas, but obviously the main people like Eric and Rodney and Chaz and, you know, all of these others you kind of know really well. But some of the others I wasn't familiar with. I know them by kind of social names. So I was so lucky that we got to sit down and play. How substantial material are the boards and cat tiles? So I'm assuming you're talking about the kind of thickness of them. So what I did is I brought another game with me, which is called The City of Kings. You may have heard of it. There's a big box there, and it has expansions. So this is one of the character sheets from the City of Kings expansion, and this is, let me just open it up. So this is a board, and as you can see, it's a folding board. It's a double-sided folding board. You're probably not going to be able to see the thickness too well on here, but these are made of kind of the same material as like the punch board is made of. It's a thick piece of board. As you can see, it's kind of very solid. I don't really know how to show you it's solid, but this is what the boats will be made of. It's exactly the same material. It'll be exactly the same process, but obviously it will be a slightly different shape. And all of the tiles will be made of this as well. So the ones that are out here, they are from GameCrafter. They're totally prototype and they are not final materials. These ones are much bigger and much better. And in regards to the cards, again, it doesn't really help me showing you cards, but these are the cards from the City of Kings. These are actually promo cards, but they are linen finish. They're 310 GSM black core cards. They're the highest quality that I'm able to get hold of, and I'm really, really happy with them. Again, the prototypes are just ones that I've got made from kind of cheaper sources, but the final version of them, these cards are as good as it is possible for me to get. Whilst we're talking about it, I will also quickly talk about the box. So this is a box for one of our expansions. You may or may not be familiar with it, but you can probably see how shiny it is. The Isle of Cats box is going to have the same UV. It's also going to have the same embossing so that the lettering is going to be raised up. With the UV and with the embossing, it really brings the colour out into the box. It really makes it shine. It gives you that kind of dynamic side. The box is also going to be a 3mm thick box. So you probably can't see here, but it's a really thick material. It's much thicker than the average kind of game box. It also has a linen finish on it. Again, you're not going to be able to tell, but it feels really nice. It's got the same kind of finish as the card. So all of the components in the game are as high grade as they can be. And this is something that, as I put on a Kickstarter from day one, it's so important to me that components are just at the highest quality they can be for the game. And it's something that I spend so much time working on. Another example is the bag. You know, I want to talk about the bag quickly because I'm sure to a lot of people, they just think, oh, you know, you just kind of have a bag. You just say, can I get a bag from the manufacturing? But no, I worked through so many iterations. So you can see this is a bag from another game, Swords and Sails. This is one that I got off Amazon. This is a different one that I got off Amazon. This is another one that I got off Amazon. This is another game which I got. This is another game which I got. This is another game. I don't know what game that was. This is another game that I got. This is another game which I'm sure is familiar to all of you. But the amount of time we spent going through these bags, the amount of time we spent working out materials, working out sizes, making sure that everything that I do, every component is as optimal as possible. It's not just a case of, I want this. It's a case of research. It's a case of, and quick disclaimer, this is why I back so many Kickstarters. It's nothing to do with the fact that I want to buy games and I want to have a big collection of games and I love playing games. It's purely work-related and research. If you believe that, then I apologize. But, you know, you can be assured that every piece in this game is going to be the highest grade that it can be. And this is what I put on the campaign page. I mean, the message is still there under the stretch goal section, but that fact that I don't believe in having low-grade components. After my first Kickstarter and we did the usual stretch goals of upgrade this, upgrade that, I just didn't want to do it again. And with Vidoran Gardens, we didn't do stretch goals. We just went straight out and said, this is what it's going to be. And with every game moving forward, I'm going to do my best to always just have the components at our highest level. you can see over here that I've got, cat meeples, and these are the larger ones, which obviously are the ones that come with a Kickstarter. And you'll see that these ones have the printing on them, and they obviously are exactly the same shape and stuff, but they've got the printing on them. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, but I tried different samples, I played around with different approaches, and I just settled on what I thought was best. I settled on what was going to give the right experience. And this is why these, the ones that don't have printings on them for the Kickstarter pack, it's why they're not in the game, and it's why we've got the printed ones. Because I really wanted to make sure that the game had the right experience. On the other side of that, the smaller ones, as many of you probably know, they don't have printing on them. And the reason for this is really straightforward. When you put printing onto things like this, there's always a deviance. They're never exact. They kind of get placed and they can be off. And the smaller the piece gets, the more off that looks. And you start to get things that just look messy. They look scrappy, and you can't ensure they're going to be high quality. So we put them at a size, and we decided actually at that size, they work perfectly. But that's why we gave them such interesting shapes, to make sure they were really unique, to make sure they really stood out, to make sure they had those different kind of portraits that when you kind of look at them just feel interesting. So let's go back to the questions. I'm sure that there's lots of stuff that's been going on. It's awesome to see the event. I'm glad to share it with you. Like, one of the things is Kickstarter, we talk about the fact that it's just a pre-order platform now. We talk about the fact that people aren't truly kind of building games to kind of launch in the way that Kickstarter was originally done. In some regards, that's true, but equally, I don't believe it's the all end. I think that Kickstarter is still a platform that allows people to create something interesting and different, and to try to innovate, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. And just because I'm here today saying to you, here's a finished game, this is what I would like to sell to you, because let's face it, as much as I try to be friendly, this is about selling a game to make it exist, and I have to be honest about that. But I want to share the development. I want to show you the process it's been through, because if I had put this on Kickstarter and had, these handwritten cards, for example, and just had, I don't know if you can see those, just having basic stuff, it never would have got anywhere. So it has to be pushed, it has to be finalized. But that doesn't mean that those levels of work never happened. And we'll go through that a little bit more shortly. Your cat decided to lay across your lap in an awkward way whilst I'm laying down watching this. I tried to have my cats in here during the stream, and it was a disaster. I did a little practice earlier, and one of them pulled the power cable out of my camera, one of them started batting the microphone, and one of them started walking in front of the lights and causing cat-shaped shadows behind me, and I decided it probably wasn't a good idea. So they are in the other room at the moment and completely locked out of this room. I'm glad I kind of got your name correct. I'm not going to say it again because I've forgotten already. I do apologise. Given the more than the good games you put out, how have you chosen to go on self-publishing instead of traditional publishing? So the reason I do self-publishing is very straightforward, and this has been the reason from day one, is because I love this idea of designing all of my games within the same universe. I love the idea of the City of Kings. I love the idea of Vidoran Gardens being the Vidorans of that world and telling their story. I love the idea of the Isle of Cats and you rescuing these cats. I love the idea of Rising Blades as another game I'm working on, of you playing the bad guys and telling that other story. And one of the worries I had from day one was, how do you do kind of IP protection? How do you own certain things? If I make the City of Kings and a publisher prints it and then they decide to stop printing it, how do I then continue to make games that are based within that world? How do I tell that story and grow that story? What happens if someone in Germany does a German translation of the Isle of Cats, but they don't want to do a German translation of Vidoran Gardens, and then they want to do this, and then they don't want to do that? And then, because they own rights to certain things, it becomes really hard. I love the idea of doing crossovers. So I don't know if I have anything here that kind of easily shows. It probably doesn't, but just a simple thing. So with Yana here, if I go back to this camera quickly, for anyone who has this, you'll see that there's the little Vengi here, which is the Vidoran Gardens fox, for want of a better word. And this is, a kind of crossover between the two games. And it's something that I want to do more and more. I want to do more crossovers. You can be, spoiler alert, you can be pretty confident that you're going to see something that's cat related in the City of Kings in a future expansion. And you're going to see City of Kings content in this. In fact, if you look on the Kickstarter page at some of the stretch goals, you will already see that I've started unlocking, or we've unlocked certain kind of City of Kings lore into the world. And for me, the idea of self-publishing, I just really was concerned that if I had other people publish it, that there would be really complex legal situations about ownership. And it's true that I could get that all done in contracts and I could have protection, but it's a world I really don't know. Like, I really understand logistics. I now really understand manufacturing. I like to think I understand design, but the legalities of global IP protection on an individual subsection basis, it felt too concerning for me. So that's the only reason that kind of self-publishing worked. I say the only reason. I guess the other reason was I wanted to make sure that the components and quality were always as good as they can be. So here's a little trick for you. And this is, again, one of the things I guess will help tell that story. This game is really expensive to make. It's not cheap to make. And the standard way people do things, they take their cost, they multiply it by 5, that's their end result. I don't do things that way. I do things in a very how I want to do them way. So I take my costs, I multiply them by 5, I realise that means this game is going to be like £90 and it's just going to be too expensive. So what I do is I take the items that I want in the game. So, for example, the wooden meeples. That was a terrible example. The wooden meeples. So, for example, the big giant bag. And I say, you know what? I'm not going to make any money off those. I'm just going to put them into the game, and I'm not going to include those into the pricing. I'm going to pretend they don't exist. The profit that I make off in an individual sale is now going to not include the money for those meeples. It's not including the money for those bags. Because you know what? I don't have staff. I don't have thousands of people that I have to pay money to every day. I have myself, and as long as I can afford to live, I am happy to put those extra things in and not recharge them out just to make sure that the game has that extra level of stuff. It's why the components are upgraded from the beginning, because I am taking that responsibility on. And I'm pretty sure if I worked with other publishers, they would probably be not as keen to do that. If you look at people like Chip Theory, who do like Too Many Bones and stuff, you'll see that they've got games, with these major big components, and they could never manage those into global kind of distribution and retail because of that. And I try to find the balance, but I do that as kind of a cost to myself, which I don't mind because it allows me to create something which I'm proud of. Me apples, I love it. That is what I will call them forever. I think that I've scrolled down very slightly, so glad I can drop on my break to see what's up. Thank you for joining us on your break. I really appreciate it. I know that people are from all around the world, and it's one of the things I love about Kickstarter, again, is you see the kind of the global levels. You see when the Americans wake up. You see when the Australians are awake. You see where kind of China is awake. You see that all the different countries of the world, and we sell like so many different locations we sell games to. And like this Kickstarter, we've had interest from 12 new countries that I've never shipped to. I think with the City of Kings, that's been shipped to 67 different countries. And with this one, I continue to have new people come along and say, hey, can I get your game? And I love it. It's fantastic to see those different kind of places. And I'm not going to lie, some of them I do have to look up on a map because I've never heard from them. And that's fantastic. It's great that more and more people from more and more places are kind of finding out about our stuff. How difficult was figuring out the scale of the cats on the tiles? The concept of them laying across in odd positions is amazing, but fitting that on a polygon is likely to be difficult. Are you talking about the kind of the art scale and the actual kind of physical drawing of the cats onto the tiles? Because that was something that took a lot of time to work out. Some of them have extra objects, so I'll see if I can find an example really quickly. Let me just take some of these out and have a quick look. Let's see. Yeah, so for example, this piece here, you'll see has a starfish in this kind of square. And that's because with this pose, we couldn't get the cat to neatly fill enough of the square. And I didn't want you to have kind of basically an empty square where you're trying to work out what color that is. So we started using objects like the starfish purely to kind of fill a bit of extra space with the same color. But at the same time, it started to tell a story. It's kind of fun, you know, having that cat pouring down onto something, because we know that's what cats do. So it was really nice to be able to have those few objects. I didn't want too many of them, but that was kind of what we used. I'm glad you're enjoying this, guys. Like, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Of course, if you've got more questions, feel free to ask them. I've got a few other questions that people asked in advance. Can you expect another game in the same universe? You certainly can. Like, I don't know when it will be yet, but you definitely can expect more games. At the moment, there are 4 games in the City of Kings universe which I've been working on and haven't thrown away yet. There's a whole bunch of games I've been working on and have thrown away, but there's continuous ideas and games that just kind of build up and hopefully will get released. But they won't be released until I'm completely content with them and 100% happy with them. Do I count myself lucky to be making a game when a Kickstarter is more widely accepted and embraced? 10 years ago, it was a very different story. Oh, completely, Nicole. I mean, I come from a video game background, and I always imagine myself designing video games, and that is a really kind of hard market, you know. To build the kind of game that I wanted to make, just breaking into that world was nearly impossible. And when I started getting into board gaming, I started thinking about board game design. Originally, it was much more of kind of as a hobby kind of basis. Like, you kind of hope that it can become your career, but you always assume that that's not going to happen. So when I eventually kind of started making the City of Kings and we got to a point where it was a built-up game, I felt so lucky that Kickstarter existed, because without it, I wouldn't be here today. I truly wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be live streaming. I wouldn't have this camera. I wouldn't have these games that I've designed and created. I wouldn't have stuffed toys, which are kind of my kind of IP. You know, I'm so thrilled and excited. It's 100% because of Kickstarter. But I guess I would kind of extrapolate that even more and say that Kickstarter has created a platform, and it's 100% because of you guys, the people who are supporting. I know that there's a lot of people who back projects and back lots of projects. I know there's a lot of companies that run multiple Kickstarters, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, this is truly a kind of a requirement for me being able to continue. If this project had not funded, if this Kickstarter had failed, if it hadn't have kind of, you know, gotten to anywhere near the point that it's gotten to now, then that would be it for me. I literally would kind of continue managing previous games. I would think about kind of how I can maybe get back into this, but I probably would have to have gone and got a job, because I can't afford to produce this game on my own. The manufacturing bills, the shipping bills are so expensive. And that's why, you know, for me, it's so genuinely thrilling to see the Kickstarter doing so well and to have so many people joining us. Like, it's life-changing for me and Sarah. And I'm so grateful. Like, I don't ever want this to come across as fake, because it is life-changing for us, and it has made so much difference that I will forever be grateful for everyone who's backed our first project, our second project, been to our convention and backed this project as well, and people who buy stuff from our store, people who come to see us at conventions. It really is just life-changing for us. And I really hope further down the line that I can get to a point where I'm more kind of self-sufficient, I guess, to be able to, if that's the right word, to be able to support myself and kind of to be able to make some games, like smaller games like Fedora and Gardens, without the need for Kickstarter. But it's a good few years down the line. Unless, obviously, this Kickstarter absolutely explodes over the next 46 hours and we get to 20,000 backers, and then maybe the next game will be a little bit easier. But I'm not sure I'm going to rely on that plan. Maybe it should be the official description. I'm not 100% sure what that was to do with, but I apologise. Given the control is one of the main reasons of self-publishing, are you strictly opposed to localised versions, or is it possible that in the future this will happen? It will 100% happen for the Isle of Cats. So The City of Kings, I have not translated. I've had countless, and I mean countless companies, probably somewhere around 40, offer to translate it. The problem is the City of Kings is so story-driven. There is so much narrative in the game, and the components are so built around that narrative that it's not just a case of translating them. It's a case of redesigning things and then reprinting them and then creating new plasticking and new tooling and new machinery to be able to create the accessories that are needed. So like the anti-knock sheets, so for people familiar with the City of Kings, they are set to a certain size. If you translate the game, they don't work anymore. They have to be remade. They have to be restructured. And the project became too much. But the Isle of Cats is a game that I've designed to be translatable. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. The Isle of Cats I've designed to be translatable. The problem is I don't have those contacts. For many years, I've been saying no to everyone for this game. So now I'm in the process of building those up, and it's happening, but it's long processes. So for example, many of you know about the Gen Con preview list on Board Game Geek, and obviously we're currently sitting at the top of that, which is great news. And you might look at that and go, oh, you know, it's just a thing, who really cares? But I actually got an email 2 days ago from a person who represents a large company in another country, and he said to me, I saw you on the list and we looked at the game and it looks amazing. Can we discuss doing translations and printed versions of it? Now that is the beginning of a really long process, and they actually said to me that if we were to do it, they would be looking to probably print the game in 2021. So we're talking at least a year after the English version. And they want to play the game, they want to see the game, we're going to meet at Gen Con and discuss the game. So there's no guarantees in any way that that will happen. But being on that Gen Con list obviously helped that situation. And I'm currently talking to 3 or 4 different companies, and more are kind of coming along basically every day now Gen Con's happening. I feel at Gen Con there'll be a lot of discussions, but none of this is going to happen for, you know, at least 6 months, I would guess, before, you know, it's going to be so much after the current Kickstarter. And then there's no guarantees, and I can't say what countries, I can't say who, I can't say where, because I just don't know until contracts are signed and agreements have happened. But the point being is, I 100% want to translate this game. I 100% plan to, but it's not going to be anytime soon. There's no guarantees. There's no actual set contract signed or anything. It's just a planning exercise that I hope will come through. I should add to that, one of the rules that I have within that process is that I will manage the manufacturing for them. So I will give them the files, they will translate, they will give them back to me, I will manufacture, they will ship and sell. So that is how, within those agreements, I am going to make sure that we maintain the quality and the control that I want to have over the components. And a lot of them say to me, no, I don't want that. We want to do it ourselves. We want to change it. And I say no to them because I'm so focused on making sure that we just produce the same thing everywhere. And enough companies will come along who are prepared for that will build up relationships. So I work with Watts, who are my manufacturers for this game, and a lot of people kind of say to me, why are you working with them? There are other companies that people are aware of, and I'm not going to say any names, but personally I had bad experiences with some of those other companies. They weren't so interested in what I was doing, whilst Watts, from day one, they were on board, they were so keen and confident, and I'm a real believer of working with those smaller people, not that they're small, but working with those companies and pushing them up and growing with them. So with translations, I want to work with as many companies as possible and give them that opportunity for us to be able to kind of grow together. So when we get to the next game and the next game and the next game, processes in place, and then hopefully further down the line, I can start having localized versions within the Kickstarter and kind of pre-planning for that. As I say, at the moment though, it's just, there's no guarantees for any of this. I like that we found the names of your cats in your games. Yes, so actually, I named Yana and Kumar after the games. We spent so much time trying to work out what to name them, and Sarah and me were just like, you know what, we love like these names of our characters. And Yana and Kumar, they're such playful characters. Kumar, this big, ancient, wise old bear. Yana, this kind of playful plant that just kind of, she's like, it's so beautiful, like, to look at. And I just kind of thought, these are the greatest names for us to use. We spent a lot of time thinking about it, but now, obviously, that's what we've settled on. You're coming across as humble, and I'm happy to be a part of this. Well, thank you so much. I mean, as I say, this is my life, I get up, during the Kickstarter, I get up, I look at the campaign, I go through comments, I answer emails, I go through messages, I work until I fall to sleep, and then generally I woke up in the middle of the night and have a quick look, and then just keep going, and I just, it's what I love doing. I love all the cat lore in the update pages. If you hadn't planned on printing these in the rulebooks, you really should. So putting the cat lore in the rulebook is something that we will not be doing. I would like to, but the rulebook is already too big. And I'm very aware that a lot of people will pick up a rulebook and they will judge it based on how many pages there are without looking at the content. And that becomes a very off-putting thing. And unfortunately, just to add any more pages, you can't just add one side of one page. You have to add 4 pages. And I don't want to add 4 more pages just to add that kind of narrative in as much as I want it. But what I'm currently thinking about, and I've not told anyone this yet, so you can be the first people to know, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but what I'm looking at doing is basically trying to put it onto the sides of the inside box. So once you've taken the lid off, obviously the lid will come off, and then you'll have these edges, which at the moment have nothing on, but I like the idea of putting them on here. And if you think of the graphics on the Kickstarter updates, they're kind of, yay high, they're yay wide. So I was thinking we could probably put 2 of them on each box in that similar kind of template. And that way you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cats around the edge. And that leaves us with 3 more spaces where potentially we can talk about what the City of Kings is. We can potentially talk about what the Isle of Cats is. And we can potentially talk about what Vesh is. So I really like the idea of trying to use the kind of the inside of the outside of the box, if that makes sense. And that's what I'm hoping to do. I haven't told anyone I really put it anywhere because there's reasons it might not work, but that's what I'm currently planning on. So I think I've caught up with the chat. Thank you everyone who's here, and I'm going to try and go through some of the questions that kind of got pre-asked. Some of them I think we've already been through. So let's have a quick look. Why is the game called The Isle of Cats and not just Isle of Cats? So this is a question I do get asked a lot. So obviously, Isle of Cats, I love cats. This is the whole kind of the pun that kind of comes with this name. If you say to people, I love cats, you can kind of roll the Isle of Cats off that and it all works together. Now that's fantastic. It's funny, it's cute, it's interesting, it's nice. I'm sure everyone's going to use it. But it's also difficult sometimes when you're having a conversation. Because if I come up to you and go, Isle of Cats, you kind of assume I'm saying I love cats. You don't necessarily, I assume I'm saying I love cats, because it's not something you really hear. And what I kind of found is in conversation sometimes it can become really confusing. If you're telling someone the name of the game, it can be funny, but they kind of forget it. It becomes really hard. But as soon as you put the in front of it, the Isle of Cats, kind of, it changes the meaning so directly. It changes it from I love cats to the Isle of Cats. And straight away, you kind of know that this is kind of more of a name, I guess. You understand it's the name of this island and it takes away the confusion. So it clarifies the meaning of what's being said. But whilst it's doing that, you still have the benefit of the pun. Like, you don't lose it just because you've got the in front of it. Many people are going to call the game Isle of Cats. Many people are going to call it I Love Cats. But it means that kind of in a more formal discussions, when I'm talking about it online, when I'm talking about it on podcasts, when people are sharing it in reviews, the just really helps kind of clarify the name. And you can do weird things, you can do fun things that you can kind of say like, do you love cats? I love cats. How about we play the I Love Cats board game? See, it works. It still works exactly the same way. It's very cheesy. That's going to be my info commercial. Do you love cats? I love cats. How about we play the I Love Cats board game? Fantastic. But, I'm so ashamed of myself sometimes. But hopefully, kind of gives you a bit of an idea behind it. I appreciate that there's kind of pros and cons to both approaches. I just felt that this was kind of the one that had the easier learning curve to it. Oh yes, 6 because of the Oshaks. There I am, I'm forgetting myself. The Oshaks is such a mysterious character. You know, that breed of cat is just so rare that often I forget myself that it exists. So yeah, it'd be 6 breeds of cat around the box, and then hopefully we can find some way to add other narrative as well. Casey says that would be amazing. Either that or a layout of how to pack the game away. I have plans for how I'm going to show people to pack the game away. I don't want to talk about it publicly yet because I'm still not sure if it's going to work, but I certainly have a goal for how I'm going to do that, and it's not going to require the outer edge of the box, but if it does, then yes, that would take priority, but I'm going to find a way to make sure that we've got the lore of the cats, the lore of Vesh and the City of Kings, hopefully as a kind of a minimum, and then that extra part of how to pack the game away. And I will also do a video on how to do that too, but hopefully it's going to be quite self-explanatory. I mean, one of the problems is with the how to pack it away and putting it into the box in the rulebook is realistically, I can only put the how to pack it away for the base game, because I can't expect people who own the game to have bought the Kickstarter packs and to have bought the expansions. And obviously for the Kickstarter, everyone gets the Kickstarter pack, but even the expansions, there's a big group of people who are getting it, there's a big group of people who aren't. So having the kind of how to pack it away include both of those extra things, I feel like that would be inappropriate. Especially when we get further down the line, if we release more expansions and more content, because then it's like, well, the game includes one expansion, but it doesn't include the other expansion. And I feel like that's quite a messy kind of system. So I'm really anxious about having specific how everything goes in within the game. But I feel like doing videos and kind of external content on our website on that would help as well. Cat's out of the bag, yeah, exactly. Another one of the puns. Every time I demo this game, I kind of put this in front of people. I let them take, well, I don't do it every time, but I try to let them take the cats out, and they'll be like, who let the cats out of the bag? Oh, you know, and just hilarious. It's great fun. I'm a very English, sarcastic person, and I often make really bad jokes, and people look at me. Were there any interesting moments or funny aha moments that came up during concept design and other things? One of the most interesting moments that came up was when I tried to do a photo shoot of Yana and Kumar with the game. It was a disaster. This is the reason why no one has seen a picture of our 2 cats in the game, because my goodness, did they not want to play. They literally were a complete nightmare. We tried so hard to do photos. Like, we made small piles of food and put polyominoes onto them. We put the food with the fish tokens. We played around so long, and that was an absolute nightmare. In regards to design itself, I think one of the interesting things, which I wouldn't say was funny, but it was a bit of a moment, was the original game was a little bit different in that it had blind bidding. It had like this kind of auctioning bidding system where you kind of did stuff secretly, then you revealed it and you kind of guessed to see who did best, and then you kind of got rewards based on that. And I was playing with John from John Gets Games, and afterwards I kind of asked him about the game, and he said like he really liked it, but he was like, I really don't like the blind bidding because it just takes a game that's quite strategic and thinky and then adds this element of kind of unknown and randomness to it. And I think the aha and funny moment for me was I was kind of like, yeah, I don't like it either. I hate the fact that there's a really cool, thinky, planny game, and then there's this completely unknown piece, and that kind of just got taken out, and I changed over that system, and I'm so much happier with the game now. Like, it was never something that I was kind of thinking, I don't like it, but it was something that just kind of, it felt not the experience I wanted to provide. So I was really happy that that kind of moment happened. And that's the beauty of playtesting. And like, that's the beauty of kind of talking with people and showing people games. And I can assure you, the Isle of Cats has been playtested so many times by so many people that you do really learn from these people. So going back through the questions. Scanson says, I think you mentioned somewhere that having a cat-themed board game has not been entirely without drawbacks. It would be interesting to know more about that. Is it simply the fact that some people don't like cats and have avoided the game, or is there more to it? So this is something that I did talk about earlier in the stream, but just to retouch on it very slightly, the reason behind it is because people generally, not everyone, but a large group of people associate cat games with city games, party games, not real games. So I always try and describe the Isle of Cats as games like Wingspan or Root. Big kind of medium weight, kind of light medium weight-ish kind of games where you're thinking, these are really good, solid games. These are a gamer's game. You can play them with other people, but this is a game that when I go to my game group tonight, I can take and put on the table, and people will kind of look at it and go, that's interesting, that's cool, that's new. And cat games aren't that really. There's not really kind of these big cat games where you can take them and go, hey, we're playing this tonight, and have that same reaction as if you put Wingspan on the table. So that was the problem, because I found that a lot of people looked at it and went, oh, cat game, party game, city game, don't care. It's never going to be a proper game. And that was one of my goals, was to fix that. I want this to be the cat game. I want this to be the gamer's game of choice. If they want to play a proper thinky game one evening and to have cats, the Isle of Cats has to be the game that they come to. That's like my fundamental goal. In like a year's time or 2 years' time, I want people to say, are there any good cat games? And the Isle of Cats is the first thing that comes out of their mouth. Not to say that there aren't other good cat games, but that's kind of the perception that it's really hard to beat. So again, answering that question it was really hard to start with, of making people understand that just because it's about cats, it's not kind of a silly game. It would be quite interesting to have an art print with the different cats lore bits in a sort of how to recognise the cat from far away. I think so as well. I mean, obviously we did the comic with semi-co-op, which I was really happy with, and I really like the idea of playing around with giving more narrative to some of these things. One of my big goals in the future is I would love to do more of the lore of the City of Kings, to make it more available, to put it online in different places, whether it's selling it, whether it's through merchandise, or whether it's just having it on a website. But unfortunately, I just don't find the time to do it, because I'm so dependent on kind of making these games and working on them and making sure that they're solid. And by the time that one kind of gets printed, I'm so excited and ready for the next game. It's just this constant iteration. So I want to make sure that I don't forget that or stop that, but it does mean that I keep struggling to get the lore and the kind of writing up there. But I do think that just more ways of doing it would be interesting. A good example of that is Ian and I wrote a book. It's a short novel. It's like 20 or 30,000 words, I think, which we wrote about 2 years ago now, maybe longer. And I always liked the idea of releasing this, but it's just sitting there, it's just untouched. And one day I need to go back to it and really push it. But it's just a case of, if I don't make money from it, it's quite hard to afford to do it. And I don't mean that in a crude way, it's just like the honest truth. And I don't necessarily want to release it to make money, because I don't think that trying to sell a book about the lore of this world is the right approach at this point. I want it to be more of a kind of organic learning thing. So John says, we have the final stretch goal on our mind for the next 2 days. Can you give us thoughts about ideas of the different animals escorting the boat on the board? So, yeah, for me, this is really straightforward. It's a case of I want them to be fantasy. I want them to fit within the world. So some of them will just be natural creatures, natural animals that you would just see as you would see them. So, for example, the pelican is going to be a pelican. It's not going to be anything fancy. But I don't want to add a bit of decoration to it. I don't want to take a twist. I want to make it something that's a little bit more unique. Now, what I want to be careful with is I don't want all of these animals to be things where we're creating new creatures within the world, because within the City of Kings, I'm very kind of careful not just to keep adding more and more. Everything has to make sense. Everything has to have a place. Everything needs to be able to be belong. And even if I don't write the story now, I need to be able to understand how that fits within the world. So some of the creatures, like the hammerhead shark is just going to be a hammerhead shark. There's going to be nothing special to it. It's just a shark that swum up alongside your boat, and it's going to be there. Now, the penguins, however, because we all love penguins, the penguins are going to be a little bit more inspired by the ockle. And the ockle, unfortunately not wearing a shirt, is one of the races within our world. And they're not going to be ockle, but they're going to have kind of some evolutionary traits where perhaps the two species kind of came off and split paths. And that's because that's something I want to be able to explore more as we move down the line. So, for me, the important process behind it really was how do we create interesting animals and also realistic stuff without kind of damaging the world, but building onto it. Because more importantly than anything else, I have to maintain kind of an ecosystem that makes sense within this world and not just keep throwing more and more into it. But obviously, we need to unlock that stretch goal. And having a look, we are, £60,000 away from it. I think, no, £50,000 away from it. The Kickstarter has gone up crazily since we started this stream. Thank you so much. Welcome to everyone who's recently joined us. I apologise. I didn't realise we've been streaming for so long. It just goes so quickly. But yeah, hopefully we are going to unlock that. But I don't want to assume. I never ever want to assume. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I really love that this game has so many ways to play. Family mode, solo mode, and really sold me. What made you think you added all those variations? So the variations for me from day one were super important. Like, super, super important. So there's a few different levels. Vidorian Garden, well, let's start with City of Kings. The City of Kings is a big cooperative adventure game, and you can play it solo. And I spent a lot of time working out a solo way to play the game. But mechanically, the game is most interesting when there are two or more characters, because the game is about strategy, it's about position, it's about how people characters interact with each other to achieve a goal. It's not a game where one person fights a creature on their own. It's a game about a team building up. And what I decided in the end was the best way to play that game solo was to control multiple characters. And that's great, but I always kind of wished that the game would work with one character. I just didn't believe that it would. Vidorian Gardens had a different problem. Vidorian Gardens follows my philosophy of, I'm a gamer, I love hardcore games, but I also love cute things and fun things and nice things. Like me and Sarah, we love thinking, but we also love cute stuff, and often those two things don't come together. So we made Vidorian Gardens to be a cute, fun game, but a really thinky game, a really puzzly game. And as you can imagine, the biggest problem we have with that game is a lot of people buy it expecting it to be something smaller, something simpler, something lighter. And they can still play the game, but it's really aimed at gamers. It's really aimed at experienced gamers. And I often refer to it as King Domino plus plus plus. If you like King Domino, but you want something much harder and much more thinky, Vidorian Gardens works. So the point is with the City of Kings, the solo mode is fantastic, but it isn't a true solo mode in the sense of you're not playing one character, because the game is dependent on you doing more than that. Vidorian Gardens is a fantastic game, but it's deceptive in the fact that it's kind of a thinky game and not a family game. So with the Isle of Cats, I realised up front that I needed a solo mode. I know how important that is now with games, and I wanted it in there. I wanted a game that really was a true solo experience, and to design it from scratch for solo players. We've got the deck of cards which we use for the game, and then we've got the deck of cards that we use as a solo game. It's a completely tailored thing, and I really, really wanted that. The family mode is interesting. So what I decided was, and it was quite a simple decision, when people see this on a shelf, they're going to look at it. There's going to be two types of people. There's going to be the familiar gamer who's like, I've heard of that, I know that game. And then there's going to be people who don't know what it is. And because of the theme and the kind of the audience, it's this mass market kind of targeting game, the theme, the cats, people are going to look at it and go, that's cute, that's fun, I want to play that. They're going to pick it up. People are going to see it in comic stores. They're going to see it in kind of geek culture stores. They're not just going to see it in board game stores. And they're going to think, I know people who like cats. I know that this is a good game to give them. And I didn't want them to pick it up and go, oh my goodness, I can't play that. I didn't want them to have that feeling of, I can't play this game because it's a 20-page rulebook. And I decided that, how do I fix that? How do I do that? And then I realized that with City of Kings and Fedora Gardens, so many people said to me they do play it with children. They do play family games. They do play lighter experience games. So I thought, how about I just do that? How about I build both? But not just like tweak the odd rule, not just say, hey, in the rulebook, if you read this bit but you do this slightly differently, it's a different game now. How about I do it from scratch? Just like the solo mode, I write a different rulebook, something simpler, something shorter, something that gives you the experience of putting cats on a boat but isn't as challenging. So that's where the solo and the family modes truly came from. That concept of wanting that solo in there just because I really wanted to support that community, and also the challenge of designing it. But with the family mode, the wanting to support people playing with their children, playing with their families, but also not wanting to kind of trick people into thinking it's a lighter game when they aren't experienced enough to play a more complex game. So it was kind of both sides of that. Just going to quickly catch up with other stuff. So a couple of people saying they've got to go. Thank you so much, David and Jason. I really appreciate you being here. I'm also probably going to be finishing up very soon as well. We have been going for a while now, and I think that we've gotten through all of the questions that have been asked. Okay, so there's one more from Delia, which was, is there a connection between the City of Kings and the Isle of Cats? Will there be a story kind of crossing them over? I touched on this earlier about how I want to make sure there are crossovers, and within the Isle of Cats already, there are some kind of objects from the City of Kings. And in the future, I hope to bring the City of Kings, the Isle of Cats into the City of Kings through expansions as well. But I will continue to bring that up. As we introduce new characters and kind of new games, you will continue to see more and more crossover between each of them. John, thank you so much for joining us. I apologise that you are coming in just at the end, but hopefully we're just going to have a little bit more and then I will be heading off. So, how did you come up to play against your sister in a solo mode? I like it because I'm always thinking of playing with my real sister when playing solo. So, playing against your sister. So for anyone who doesn't know, in the solo mode of this game, you're playing against another player. And that other player is your sister. Thematically, we talk about how your sister has snuck aboard your boat and how they're kind of trying to steal kind of credit from you. So there was a lot of kind of thinking about this. And really, I think the answer to it is I wanted something that was playful and fun. I had to have another person. I didn't want to just call it the automata. I didn't want to call it the AI. I didn't want to call it just, the solo competitor. I wanted it to be a character. I wanted to have narrative. I wanted to have a story because I'd like everything to make sense. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what makes sense, like who could be on this boat and why would they be on this boat? And then I was thinking, well, maybe it's a spy of Vesh. Maybe it's a kind of an evil person. Maybe it's someone who doesn't like you. Maybe it's someone who's trying to sabotage you. Maybe it's like an arch enemy. And all of these things are cool and they work, but they're really aggressive. They're not fun. They're not playful. Again, the whole point of this was to have something that's kind of a pleasant experience. And I thought, what's more kind of, aggressive and argumentative, but also fun and playful as like a sibling rivalry. This concept of, you're like arguing with your sibling, your brother, your sister, and you're constantly kind of arguing with them, but you also love them, and deep down you still care for them, it's still a good thing, but you're kind of competing to be like the best in this situation. So that's where that kind of came from. I just really went back to kind of thinking about my sisters and like how I kind of see that side of things as well. So guys, thank you so much for joining me for this stream. I really, really appreciate it. We've got 46 hours to go on the Kickstarter, and so far we have just blown away every single expectation I had. But now we've got one final goal. This goal to kind of get this stretch goal of the £435,000. My goodness, I hope that's the right number. And we are getting closer. We are nearly halfway there. And I really, really, truly hope that we do manage to get there. In fact, I think we might be over halfway now because it was 340,000 when we added it. So we've done 47,961. It was a 95,000 stretch goal. So 47,500. So we are halfway there. We're halfway there to the stretch goal. And I do think that we are going to be able to do this. But this means we need to spread the word. We need to share the word. But more importantly, when people come to the project now, just to help ask their questions, just to be there, to be friendly, to be kind of polite. And like, I love the community we built, how nice everyone has been. And I don't want to like tell you to continue doing that, because just be how you've been. And I'm sure this is all going to go fantastically. If you didn't make the stream, then please, if you're watching it later, feel free to ask questions in the comments below. I'm so sorry about the trouble we had at the beginning in getting the stream kind of onto the right event. I'm going to try and look into that to see how I can get it right in the future. I do hope to stream for the last hour of the campaign on Thursday. I'm not going to guarantee it yet because it does depend on a couple of things. But I'm 100% focused on kind of doing a similar thing to count down that end of the stream as well. So hopefully, if you're going to be around on Thursday, I think it'll be at a similar time. Obviously, it's 46 hours time now. Hopefully, we'll be able to stream together then as well. Guys, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm so grateful that you turned up. I'm so grateful that you joined me. I'm so grateful for the questions, for the support, and for everything else, guys. So one of the really interesting things now is that I have no idea how to stop this stream because I rushed so much to set it up using a different system to normal. I'm going to have to find the right button. But guys, thank you so much. As always, I will be happy to answer questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions on the Kickstarter page. And until next time, guys, have fun and keep on adventure.